In a shocking live broadcast from a major studio, former President Donald Trump dropped a political bombshell, accusing Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett of a pattern of biased and politically motivated judgments. The studio fell silent as Trump delivered his fiery remarks, leaving the audience stunned. This unexpected confrontation could significantly alter the American judicial landscape. The studio lights were almost blinding as cameras rolled, capturing every moment. All eyes were fixed on the stage, but no one, not even the seasoned anchors, could predict what was about to unfold. President Donald J. Trump, now in his second term as the 47th President of the United States, stood tall behind the podium. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. This wasn't just another press conference. It was a moment of grave national importance. Rumors had been circulating all week about Trump planning to go live on national television to reveal matters of grave concern. Yet, no one expected the bombshell he was about to drop. As he placed his notes down, Trump looked directly into the camera, and the studio fell into complete silence. Not a single sound disturbed the air as he began to speak. "My fellow Americans," Trump started, his voice steady yet heavy with the weight of his words. "I did not come here today to play politics. I came to tell you the truth." His words sent a chill through the air. Families watching at home gripped their seats while elderly viewers felt their hearts pound. Something historic was unfolding, and it was only the beginning. The camera zoomed in closer to Trump's face. He raised his hand, signaling to the crew not to cut away. There was no teleprompter, no prepared speech, only raw, unscripted truth. "For too long," he continued, "we've trusted the people in black robes to be fair, to be just, to be above politics. But tonight I must tell you that trust has been betrayed." Gasps echoed through the studio. Even the senior producer, a man who had covered 5 presidents, looked frozen in place. Trump's gaze sharpened. He wasn't speaking as a politician anymore. He was speaking as a man carrying the weight of a nation. He took a deep breath and then, without flinching, he spoke the unthinkable. "Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett has shown patterns of decisions not guided by law but by political motives. Decisions that should terrify every single American who believes in justice." The audience back home felt their hearts tighten. Some wiped away tears, sensing that something enormous had just been set in motion. "My duty is to the people," Trump declared, his voice filled with thunder, "and I refuse to remain silent." The whole nation held its breath. Time seemed to stop as viewers across the country, especially the elderly who had seen decades of political games, knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. Trump, standing strong behind the podium, held up a folder thick and heavy marked "Confidential Evidence." Cameras zoomed in and the room pulsed with anticipation. "I have here undeniable proof," he said firmly, "that Judge Barrett has been swayed by forces outside the courtroom. Not law, not justice, but personal and political bias." Tears welled up in the eyes of older viewers who had placed their faith in the courts for so many years. Many whispered to themselves, "How could this happen?" But let me be clear. Trump's voice softened, carrying deep emotion. "I do not come with hate. I come with hope. Hope that by exposing this, we can rebuild trust in our justice system." The studio remained frozen as if history itself paused to listen. This was no longer just politics. It was a fight for the soul of the nation. President. Trump's fingers tightened around the edges of the heavy folder. The studio lights reflected off the golden seal of the presidency stamped across the top. No one spoke. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. Slowly, with full intention, Trump opened the folder and spread the pages across the podium. Each page was marked with case numbers, timelines, and most importantly, Judge Amy Coney Barrett's own handwritten notes. "This," Trump said, holding up one document for the cameras, "is a ruling where Justice Barrett reversed a decision not because of the law but because of quiet pressure from political influencers." Gasps rippled through the studio. He laid down the next page, then another, creating a paper trail so clear that even the doubters in the room began to tremble. "My legal team worked day and night to uncover this," Trump continued, his voice filled with a quiet fire. What we found is undeniable. Back home, millions of Americans, especially elderly citizens who had trusted the courts all their lives, felt their eyes sting with tears. Their belief in fairness was being shaken to the core. Trump's promise to reveal the full truth was only beginning. Trump's tone grew firmer as he pointed to a timeline projected on the screen behind him. The studio technicians, hands shaking, zoomed the camera closer. "Look here," Trump instructed. "This decision, made just 3 months ago, directly benefited organizations connected to partisan donors." The audience gasped once again, their disbelief turning into a painful, aching sorrow. Trump then showed financial transactions carefully traced and verified by independent auditors. Money flowed from shadowy accounts to a network of nonprofits, all circling back to connections of Justice Barrett. Tears rolled down the cheeks of some in the studio. Even hardened journalists who had covered countless scandals found themselves deeply moved. "I understand," Trump said, his voice filled with empathy. "Many of you trusted her, just as I once did. But I owe you the truth, no matter how painful it is." Back home, elderly viewers clutched tissues, feeling heartbreak but also relief. Relief that someone at last was brave enough to speak. "This is not about revenge," Trump added softly. "It's about protecting the heart of our nation, the rule of law." The nation sat on the edge of their seats awaiting more. As the evidence unfolded on live television, whispers turned into a rising wave of concern across the country. Phones buzzed in homes and newsrooms. Text messages flew between neighbors. "Are you watching this? Is this real? God bless President Trump for telling us the truth." Trump leaned toward the microphone, his face solemn. Tonight he spoke not just as the president, but as a father, a grandfather, and a servant of the people. His words, simple and human, reached straight into the hearts of viewers, especially those elderly patriots who had lived through decades of political storms. He continued, "Our Supreme Court is meant to be our shield against injustice. But when that shield is cracked, we must repair it, not ignore it." Tears welled in the eyes of many. Some whispered prayers. Others felt an overwhelming gratitude that someone finally had the courage to stand for them. Trump's voice trembled not with fear, but with the weight of his mission. "I promise you this," he said, pausing for effect. "I will not let this corruption continue." The studio erupted in applause, but the story had only just begun. The studio screen flickered as President Trump motioned to the technician. "Put it up," Trump instructed, his voice unwavering. Suddenly, an image filled the giant screen behind him, a scanned handwritten letter marked private and confidential. "This letter," Trump began, pausing to let the moment sink in, "was never supposed to see the light of day." He cleared his throat, then continued with careful words. "It is from Justice Barrett to a political strategist, dated just weeks before a critical ruling. In it," she writes, "we must ensure the outcome aligns with the broader agenda. I trust you understand the stakes." A collective gasp filled the studio. Some viewers at home, especially older ones, felt tears sliding down their cheeks. They had trusted her. They had prayed for fairness. "My fellow Americans." Trump's voice thickened with emotion. "This isn't just about politics. This is about the soul of our justice system." The studio remained frozen in shock. Back home, people shook their heads in disbelief, their hearts breaking at the betrayal. Trump looked directly into the camera. "And I will not let this betrayal continue." Trump continued, flipping to the next piece of evidence. "This," he said, holding up another document, "details private meetings held late at night away from public records." The screen now displayed secret schedules, hotel bookings, private drivers, and locations known only to insiders. "She met," Trump continued slowly, "with powerful donors and political actors just days before ruling on their interests." The pain in his voice was genuine. His eyes glistened not from fear, but from the weight of duty. "I know this is hard to hear," Trump said softly, his tone deeply human, "especially for those of you who believed in her as a person of integrity. But my promise to you is this: truth above all else. In living rooms across the country, elderly viewers wept. Some whispered to their spouses, "Finally, someone is brave enough to say it." The studio audience shifted uncomfortably, their faces a mix of sorrow and stunned disbelief. Trump pressed on, strong and determined. "I am not here for applause," he declared, his voice echoing. "I am here for justice." And with that, he turned another page in the folder. The storm was far from over. As the broadcast continued, something remarkable began to happen. Calls flooded into news stations, social media erupted. But more importantly, tears of both heartbreak and hope filled the eyes of viewers nationwide. For years, many had doubted their own concerns, brushing them aside, trusting the system. But tonight, Trump had confirmed their deepest fears and offered them a glimmer of justice. "My fellow citizens," Trump said, his voice resonating with deep passion. "Corruption doesn't just hide in the shadows. Sometimes it wears the robe of authority." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle deep into the hearts of millions. "I know you feel betrayed," he continued. "I feel it too. But tonight, we stand together, stronger, braver, and more determined than ever to save our country. As moi." The camera panned to the studio audience. Some wiped away tears. Some clasped their hands in silent prayer. Even those who once doubted Trump now felt a swelling pride in his courage. This was only the beginning. Trump promised, and across the nation, hearts ached with both pain and newfound hope. The fight for truth had just begun. Trump's hand trembled, just slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what he was about to reveal. "This case," he said slowly, holding up a court docket, "was one many of you remember, a case involving veterans' benefits." The studio fell even quieter, if that was possible. In her ruling, Justice Barrett sided against thousands of brave veterans who had sacrificed everything for our country. Trump's voice quivered with emotion as he continued, "But now we know why." He turned to the screen behind him. The nation watched as records flashed across it: donations, secret dinners, private letters. They connected Coney Barrett to lobbyists representing corporations who stood to gain from the decision. At home, elderly veterans watching this felt a sharp pain in their hearts. Tears welled in their eyes. They had trusted the courts to protect them, not betray them. Trump, sensing their pain, looked into the camera. "To every veteran, every family who believed in justice, I am here to fight for you," he declared. The audience erupted into applause, but tears of heartbreak and gratitude filled the room. The truth was cutting deep. As Trump flipped to the next case file, the atmosphere grew heavier. "This," Trump announced, "is the heartbreaking story of the Thompson family. Many of you might remember it." He paused, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He then displayed photos of a humble, hard-working family. Parents, children, even a newborn baby. They fought for years for justice after losing their home due to an unfair foreclosure, Trump explained, his voice filled with sorrow. The studio audience leaned in, their eyes glued to the screen. Justice Barrett, Trump continued, holding up the final ruling, dismissed their plea. But what wasn't known until now is that one of the involved banks had deep ties to political donors connected to her office. A collective gasp swept through the room. Trump's eyes glistened with emotion as he added, "The Thompsons are just one family, but their story is a symbol of so many silent cries across this nation." At home, viewers wiped away tears. Many saw their own struggles reflected in the Thompson family's pain. Trump closed the file gently. "No more silent cries," he vowed. The nation listened, hearts breaking. The broadcast was now in its third hour, yet not a soul left the studio. No one could turn away. "Friends," Trump said, his voice raw but powerful, "this isn't about one case or one mistake. This is a pattern." He showed a new set of documents, different cases, different victims, but the same troubling fingerprints: biased decisions, quiet pressure, political strings pulled in the shadows. The studio audience wept openly now. Elderly viewers at home felt tears run down their cheeks uncontrollably. Husbands gripped their wives' hands. Grandmothers prayed silently. Trump's face was filled with deep determination. "I know you are hurt. I know you feel betrayed," he said, pausing as his voice cracked with genuine emotion. "But I promise you I will not rest until truth wins." The camera zoomed in as he placed his hand over his heart. "This is not about politics," he continued. "It's about protecting every American from injustice, no matter their age, no matter their background." His words felt like a warm hand on the nation's wounded heart. And in that moment, hope began to flicker again. President Trump, standing, strong behind the podium, held up a worn envelope. "This letter," he said softly, "was sent to me by a brave American mother." He unfolded it carefully. His voice was filled with emotion as he read, "Mr. President, my son was denied justice. He was a good boy, a hard-working man. But when he fought for his rights, Judge Barrett's court turned him away. We lost our home, we lost everything." Trump's voice cracked ever so slightly as he paused. "This mother trusted the system," he continued, eyes glistening. "But the system failed her." The studio audience fell silent, many with tears streaking their faces. Across the country, families, watching at home, held each other close. Trump raised his eyes to the camera. "No mother should ever write such a letter," he declared, his voice trembling with determination. "No family should ever be crushed under the weight of corruption." He gently placed the letter beside the evidence pile, like a sacred testimony. "This is not just paperwork," he added firmly. "These are the lives of our people," he vowed again. "And I will fight for them." Trump motioned to his team, and a new document appeared on the studio screen. It was a financial disclosure, but not the kind you see on the news. This one had been hidden deep, buried beneath layers of shell companies. "My team found this," Trump said. "A secret fund connected to law firms with direct ties to Justice Barrett." The audience leaned in, breathless. "These funds," Trump continued, "were funneled to influence outcomes on key cases that decided the futures of hardworking Americans." His voice carried a quiet fury. "This isn't just wrong," he said. "It's a betrayal of the highest trust in our land." Tears welled in the eyes of many watching. Elderly veterans, small business owners, families struggling to survive. They saw their own battles reflected in every word. Trump's gaze turned personal, almost fatherly. "I promised you I would clean the swamp," he said, "and I never break a promise." The studio audience stood and clapped, not for politics, but for truth. The moment felt like a rising tide of justice, and Trump made it clear this was only the beginning. The atmosphere in the studio was electric yet somber. Every soul in the room felt the weight of history unfolding. Trump looked directly into the camera as if speaking to every American face to face. "Let me show you," he said, pulling up a timeline. How carefully this web was spun. The screen behind him filled with dates, names, and court rulings. One by one, Trump connected the dots. Decisions that favored powerful elites while ordinary people were left in ruins. "These aren't coincidences," he said firmly. "This is a deliberate pattern." Back home, tears streamed down faces. People whispered, "How could this happen?" Others clenched their fists in quiet pain, feeling their heartbreak turn into a burning need for justice. Trump's voice softened. "I know this is hard to hear," he said, "but the truth will set us free. We cannot heal what we refuse to face." A heavy pause settled over the studio. "But today," Trump declared, his hand rising with strength, "we face it together." The crowd erupted in emotional applause, many wiping away tears of both sorrow and rising hope. The fight for America's soul was far from over, and Trump was leading it. President Trump turned to the studio screen once again, and this time, it wasn't documents or timelines. It was faces, real people, families torn apart by the injustice. "This is Mr. Harold Jensen," Trump began, pointing to an elderly man in a photo. "A World War II veteran. He fought bravely for this country. But when a legal dispute over his pension reached the court, he lost everything." Trump's voice lowered. "With pain, The judge ruled against him in record time. No explanation, no mercy. Tears welled in the eyes of the audience. Many elderly viewers at home saw themselves in Mr. Jensen. Some whispered prayers for him. Trump's hand trembled slightly as he pointed to the next photo. A young mother clutching her child. "And this is Maria Lopez," he said softly. "She fought for the right to keep her small business, but decisions from the bench, influenced by political agendas, shut her doors forever." The weight in the room was unbearable. Viewers at home wiped their eyes, their hearts heavy with sorrow. Trump looked straight at the camera, his voice filled with promise. "These are not just cases. These are our people." The studio, once a place of cameras and bright lights, had now become a place of mourning and awakening. Tears rolled freely down many faces. Even the cameramen, seasoned and hardened by years in the business, struggled to keep their composure. Trump, steady and determined, stepped back to the podium. "I know tonight is hard to watch," he said, his voice warm and fatherly, "but America deserves to see the truth." He held up a chart showing rising numbers of dismissed cases, disproportionately affecting the vulnerable, veterans, farmers, small business owners, and ordinary families. "These are not just statistics," he continued. "These are lives. These are your neighbors, your friends, your families." He paused and let the silence linger, respecting the weight of the moment. "Justice should never be for sale," Trump declared firmly. The audience erupted into applause, but it wasn't the usual excitement of politics. It was something deeper, a raw, emotional cry for justice. Trump's eyes softened as he finished. "And tonight, I stand not as a politician, but as your friend, your advocate, your voice." Across America, hearts broke, but they also began to hope. As the broadcast entered its final stretch for the night, Trump's closing words left the studio trembling. "My friends," he began, "for too long, you have been lied to, betrayed, and left in the dark." He motioned to his team, and a final image appeared. The faces of every family affected by these unjust rulings. Side by side, their eyes stared into the lens, into the soul of the nation. Trump's voice grew emotional. "This is not a moment for despair," he said. "This is a moment to rise." He leaned closer to the microphone, his voice low but powerful. "I promise you, as your president, as the 47th President of the United States, I will pursue this until justice is done." The audience stood in a spontaneous ovation, many crying openly. Viewers at home reached for tissues, overwhelmed by the moment. Trump ended with words that sent chills through the nation. "Together we will bring the truth into the light, and together we will heal this great nation." The studio lights dimmed, but the fire in the hearts of Americans had just been lit. President Trump motioned to the side of the stage. "Bring him in," he instructed. The studio doors opened slowly, and an elderly man with a cane stepped forward. His hands trembled as he approached the podium, eyes filled with years of pain. "This is Mr. Samuel Clayton," Trump introduced. "A farmer from Iowa who lost his land after a court decision that destroyed his life." Samuel's voice shook as he began. "For 40 years I farmed that land. It fed my children, it paid for their schools. But when a land dispute went to court, I trusted justice would prevail." He paused, swallowing back tears. "But Judge Barrett's ruling ended everything. My land was taken. My family was scattered." The studio was filled with heavy silence, broken only by the sound of quiet sobbing from the audience. Trump gently placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder. "This is why I fight," Trump said, his voice filled with steel. "Because no American should suffer this way." Viewers at home wept openly. Many saw their own fathers, brothers, and grandfathers in Samuel, and they knew this was a fight for every American. Trump wasn't finished. With a steady hand, he motioned for the next witness to come forward. The studio doors opened once more, and a young mother holding a folded American flag walked slowly to the front. Her name was Emily Reyes. Her eyes, heavy with sorrow, met Trump's with a silent thank you. Emily's husband served this country with honor, Trump explained. But when she sought justice after his wrongful death, she faced a courtroom that had already decided her fate. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks as she spoke. "They told me my case had no standing," she whispered. "But I saw the truth. I saw how political interests weighed more than my husband's sacrifice." Her voice cracked, and the audience broke into tears with her. "My children," she continued, holding up a photo of her young boys, "ask me every night why Daddy isn't coming home." Trump's face tightened with emotion. "No family should carry this pain," he declared, turning to the nation. Viewers at home cried freely, their hearts aching for Emily. Trump's promise thundered in every heart. "We will not forget you. We will not abandon you." As Emily stepped back, her eyes filled with gratitude, Trump turned to the nation once more. "Tonight," he said, his voice deep and unwavering, "we have heard the voices they tried to silence." He walked slowly to the center of the stage, speaking directly to the camera, as if speaking to every single American face to face. "Behind every corrupted decision, there is a real person, a real family, a real pain that cannot be buried." He pointed to the growing wall of faces behind him. Photos of victims from across the country now filled the screen. "This is the wall they cannot hide behind," Trump declared. "This is the truth they cannot escape." The studio audience erupted into a mix of tears and applause. At home, viewers gripped tissues, crying profusely, feeling the raw power of this moment. Trump's eyes glistened as he made a vow. "I stand with you, America, and I will not stop until justice is restored." The broadcast was no longer just news. It was a nation awakening, and Trump was leading the charge. Trump stepped forward once more, holding a USB drive high in his hand. "Tonight," he said, "you will see what was never meant for your eyes." He plugged the device into the studio system. The screen behind him flickered, then displayed calendar entries, private locations, and confidential attendees. "Here," Trump pointed, "a private dinner, Justice Barrett, high-profile lobbyists, and executives whose cases came before her court." The camera zoomed in. Dates matched suspicious rulings. Patterns were undeniable. "These are not coincidences," Trump declared. "This is a blueprint of influence." The studio audience gasped. At home, millions wept openly, feeling betrayed yet grateful for the truth. Trump's voice grew firmer. "I know this hurts," he said, his eyes reflecting the weight of the nation. "But you deserve to know. America deserves to know." Messages flashed on the screen next, emails that read like transactions of power. "Confirm vote before next week's ruling. Ensure alignment with interests discussed." Viewers clutched their hearts, tears in their eyes. Trump's words thundered. "They thought they could hide this from you, but they were wrong." The wall of secrecy had begun to crumble. The studio, lights dimmed to focus on the giant screen. Email after email appeared. Each line of text felt like a dagger in the heart of justice. Trump read them aloud. "Your expected outcome is appreciated." One message read, sent just days before a major ruling. Another, "Thank you for understanding the importance of political unity in your decisions." The studio fell into a suffocating silence. Even the hardest reporters, seasoned by years of scandals, felt their throats tighten. Trump's voice softened, filled with sorrow. "My friends, this is what happens when power corrupts," he said gently. "This is not the America we believe." At home, many viewers openly sobbed. Elderly veterans, widows, and working families saw their struggles reflected in every word. Trump raised his eyes to the camera. "But together, we can change this. Together, we will restore fairness." Applause broke out in the studio, but it was not the applause of politics. It was the applause of aching hearts finding hope. Trump continued, "This is not the end. This is just the beginning." And across the nation, people wiped their tears, holding on to that hope. As the final email faded from the screen, Trump took a steady breath. "My fellow Americans," he said, his voice clear and resolute, "now that you have seen the truth, you will understand the storm about to come." He turned to his staff, and with a nod, a new display lit up. Maps of influence networks connecting special interest groups, donors, and political players tied to Judge Barrett's decisions. "They built a chain of power," Trump explained, tracing the lines with his finger. "But one chain, no matter how strong, breaks at its weakest link." The audience, still wiping tears from their eyes, leaned forward, hanging on every word. Trump's voice grew louder, filled with conviction. "We are that link, the people. We are the force that will break this chain." The studio erupted into standing applause, many overcome with emotion. At home, elderly viewers felt a swell of pride and courage rising in their chests. Trump placed his hand on his heart. "I stand with you," he declared, "and I will not back down." The chain had begun to break, and hope, unstoppable and pure, swept across the nation like a rising tide. Trump held up a weathered envelope, the A, edges worn as if it had been read 1,000 times. "This," he said softly, "is a letter from a young boy named Daniel. He's 12 years old. His father was a small business owner, but after a court ruling, they lost everything." Trump's eyes misted as he carefully unfolded the letter. "Dear President Trump," he read aloud, "I don't understand why the court took away our shop. My dad cries at night. We miss our home. Can you please help us?" The studio fell into absolute silence. Tears streamed down the faces of the audience. Some covered their mouths. Others simply let the sorrow fall freely. Trump's voice cracked just slightly with deep emotion. "No child should ever have to write such a letter," he said, his heart heavy. Viewers at home, especially grandparents, wiped their eyes, deeply touched by young Daniel's pain. Trump held the letter close to his chest and looked into the camera. "I will fight for Daniel," he declared. "I will fight for every child and every family in this country." Hope flickered in broken hearts across America. As Trump finished reading Daniel's heartbreaking letter, something unexpected happened in the studio. Audience members began to stand, one by one, clapping through their tears. It started slowly, but soon the entire room was on its feet, applauding not just the president, but the courage it took to expose the truth. Trump's eyes, filled with emotion, scanned the crowd. "You are the power of this nation," he said, his voice strong yet gentle. "You, the people." On the screen, more letters poured in from across the country. Farmers, widows, veterans, young, workers, all writing to the president, begging for fairness, thanking him for giving them a voice. At home, viewers felt united in a way they hadn't for years. Many cried so hard they couldn't hold back. Messages of support filled online chat, rooms, and phone lines. Trump raised his hand to calm the crowd. "Tonight," he said, "we don't just witness history, we make it." The cheers grew louder, filled with hope, pain, and determination. For the first time, many felt the weight of injustice finally beginning to lift. The tide was turning. The energy in the studio had transformed into something electric, a shared heartbeat of millions rising together. Trump, steady and determined, stepped back to the podium. "I know many of you are hurting," he began, his tone filled with compassion. "But I promise you this: I will not stop until justice is served." He pointed to the wall of faces and letters behind him, a powerful display of the human cost of corruption. "They tried to silence your voices," he said, his eyes fierce. "But tonight, the entire nation hears you." The camera zoomed in, catching every emotion on his face. "Every lie," Trump continued, "every betrayal, every moment of injustice ends here." Applause thundered once more, tears flowing freely across the studio and homes all over the country. Viewers felt their hearts swell with pride and relief. Finally, someone was fighting for them. Trump raised his hand in a salute. "This is our America," he declared, "and together we will bring it back to justice and fairness." As he spoke those words, hope swept across the nation like a wave, unstoppable and full of light. The studio had grown so quiet, it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. President Trump stepped forward, holding the final file in his hands. "My fellow Americans," he began, his voice filled with steady power. "This last file connects every piece of the puzzle." He placed the folder on the podium and slowly opened. Inside were records, undeniable proof of the final chain of influence. "These are internal memos," Trump continued, "between political organizations in Judge Barrett's chambers. Memos that discuss not justice, not fairness, but winning favors." The camera zoomed in, showing the handwritten notes that chilled the nation to its core. Ensure ruling favors donor interest. Confirmation expected outcome. Tears filled the eyes of those in the studio and millions watching from their living rooms. The truth was now undeniable. "They traded your lives for their power," Trump said, his voice thick with emotion. "But no more." Applause erupted. Viewers at home clapped through their tears, many standing to their feet. Trump's eyes, firm yet kind, looked straight into the camera. "Today, we tear down their house of lies." The moment felt like history being written before their very eyes. As Trump's words echoed across the nation, something remarkable began to happen. From small towns to big cities, people stepped outside their homes, waving flags, holding signs of support. Farmers, veterans, mothers, and workers alike raised their voices together. The unity was overwhelming. "I see you," Trump declared, watching the live feeds flood into the studio. "I hear you." He pointed to the screen where thousands chanted in unison, "We stand with Trump. We stand for justice." Tears streamed down Trump's face, not from sadness, but from seeing a nation rising as one. "This," he said softly, "is the America we know and love. This is the America we fight for." The studio audience, filled with ordinary citizens who had suffered in silence for years, cheered through their emotions. Back home, viewers cried profusely, feeling pride and hope swell in their hearts. Trump raised his fist in triumph. "No matter how deep the corruption runs," he promised, "we, the people, will always rise higher." As his words rang out, the nation felt reborn. Justice, long buried, was finally breaking through the surface. The final chapter of this unforgettable broadcast had arrived. Trump, standing proud beneath the bright studio lights, addressed the nation one last time. "My friends," he said, "tonight we expose the truth. We've seen pain. We've shed tears. But we've also found something greater. Unity." He motioned to the wall of letters, faces, and testimonies. "You are the heartbeat of this nation," he continued. "Because of you, justice will be restored." The studio erupted into applause once more, but this time it was different. It wasn't applause for a man. It was applause for a nation awakened. "For every tear you shed tonight," Trump said, his voice thick with emotion, "I give you my vow. I will not stop fighting. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." He smiled warmly at the camera, directly into the hearts of every viewer. "And if this story touched your heart," Trump said with deep sincerity, "I ask you to do something simple but powerful. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so we can continue this fight together." He paused, eyes glistening. "Because together we are unstoppable." The screen faded to black, but the fire in the hearts of the people burned brighter than ever.